Crochet away, crochet away, crochet away with me. Hi everybody, this is Toby. And I'm your skipper, Sandra, and this is Rhonda, and here we are, back again. And here we are talking about stitch markers today. Yay! Stitch markers! What are stitch markers?
Very useful.
We're going to talk about that. I hope everybody's doing really well. So obviously it's fall and we've kind of moved. What?
It's fall.
It's fall. Well,
I'm
I've kind of been falling.
with you.
And my nose is red. Like, we didn't even do makeup or anything because I can't stop my nose from itching. And
we're all natural.
Yeah, we are. We're so au naturel. It's not that funny. Won't be later, but we are now. Okay, so with that said, today what we're all going to be talking about is stitch markers. Okay?
Yes.
So, but it's not just stitch markers. Yeah, what are stitch markers? You know, those glorious little things that we put on our projects because they're oh so immensely cute. And they're adorable, and I love them, and we have lots of them. And you know, some people put them on and use them as zipper pulls. Other people use them as earrings, and you'll see why. And they're so much fun, and they're creative, but they're not just called stitch markers. They're also called row markers or placeholders. Well, why? And I can explain that. So with the placeholder, let's say you've been crocheting, right? So we're gonna do this real quick. So let's say you've been crocheting. Here we are. I'm gonna crochet a couple of stitches. We're gonna get to the end, and you have guess, or you're just done for the night, which, you know, it's always one more row. But we usually, most of us will either do the extension and leave a long loop,
which does not work well.
Not always.
Not so
or
much.
another technique is you just put the hook with the yarn through your project, but that doesn't always work
No,
either.
because it falls out.
Because it can fall out. So one of the lovely things is
I'll show you. Oh, go ahead, talk. I'll show.
Oh, okay. Is you can use your stitch marker to be a placeholder. So you would just attach it to your loop. Vanna.
Yes, thank you.
And now pull tight. Pull tight. And see how now it doesn't come undone. So your work will stay there. So if you have fuzzy little kitties like the one that's asleep on the sofa across from us, or you have little fingers, as in little feet running around, who decide, ooh, look what's being done, and decide to pull on it, it's not going to go anywhere. And she's obviously working on a blanket. It's not pretty. I love it. Mr. Boo is under the table.
Another Christmas present. I was doing Christmas present the last time. I'm doing Christmas present again. What?
What if they find out?
I didn't say who it was for.
Oh, okay. So yes, and there, as far as stitch markers, there's also different kinds. So knitters use one style of stitch markers, and crocheters use another style of stitch markers. Not that knitters haven't used stitch markers very similar to the crochet ones or crochet ones, because occasionally they have to be able to be removable, and that I'll show you when we're in just a little bit. So,
but I do find it fabulous or fascinating that a knitter can use a crochet marker, but a crocheter cannot use a knitter stitch marker.
Right.
We'll
Because,
show you that
and it's
live,
because of the style of artwork. And I'm sorry guys, my nose is just won't stop itching.
I'm gonna crochet now.
Yeah, you better crochet now. All right. So again, it's different. And yes, absolutely, they're not interchangeable necessarily. And it's kind of sad in a way because the knitters are really cute, but that's okay because I'm going to show you how to convert a knitter's stitch marker into a crocheter's stitch marker, and you will have more variety.
She's going to teach you conversion.
Conversion. Unlike
convert you.
math. Yes, I will convert you. I'll bring you over to the dark side. Come to the dark side. We have cookies. Okay, so let's start with the knitting stitch markers. And those look like this. So as you can see, this is just a round ring. And the reason is that they don't need to come apart like ours does. There's another knitting one. Now, before I show you the example, and I'm going to show you how these work. Before I do that, you guys have to promise not to laugh. So I was looking for my knitting needles because, as you all know, I'm bisexual, and I couldn't find my knitting needles. So what I did was I went and got 2 Tunisian crochet hooks, and here's the other one. I got 2 Tunisian crochet hooks that were the same size to use as knitting needles. And so here's an interesting side note. So in Portugal, their knitting needles actually are hooked at the end. And what they do is they also fling the tension yarn around the back of their neck, and they have a pin, and it's all this funky thing, and it's kind of cool. But they are not crocheting. It is knitting, just like you see on here. This is knitted, but it's, as I said, it's done with hooked needles. So I thought that was really kind of cool. So, and that's all, and then we're going to get more into that. It's another video, but
Okay,
it's all
wait,
part of my
question.
house. Yeah. What?
So if this is knitting and you did it on the Tunisian hooks, what's the difference in Tunisian crochet and knitting?
So that's a whole nother video, but the difference between standard crocheting is when you're crocheting, and let me grab this other example since she's going to like totally take us off our mission here.
I'm excellent for that.
Yeah, you are. Talk about distraction. So let's undo some of this, and that's okay. We're single crochets. We can work with those. So with a single crochet, or with crocheting Tunisian, and you can actually do Tunisian crochet with any crochet hook. It's just that because of the way that it's done, having a longer hook is better, and you'll see why here in a minute. So with Tunisian crochet, you do this. You pick up the first half of the stitches. With Tunisian crochet, what you're actually doing is you create half the stitch going in one direction, and that's what we're doing here. We're creating half the stitch. See, I'm not closing my stitch out, okay, which is very similar to knitting. But see how they all stay on my hook just as if I were knitting. Okay. Here's the difference. Unlike knitting, I'm now going to close my stitches, and I now have a row. Whoops, when I don't like lose them, I now have a row. My dog's trying to get in behind me. Come on, Boo. There you go. I now have a row of single crocheted stitches. Okay. Finish this out, and I end with the one hook. But it is a different look, but this is a single crochet in a Tunisian style. And
so you just keep doing the same process.
It's like a typewriter.
But you never turn.
You never turn.
Fascinating. Okay, yeah, we'll check that out later.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Totally,
for that really quick.
totally different thing. However, this is where the kind of pseudo similarity happens with knitting. So here we have knitting, and this, for those of you who don't know, this is a stitch saver for knitting needles. This is or the hook saver. Typically on a knitting needle, you would just slide on. You would have them in sizes that would fit your knitting needles. But because this is a crochet hook, I kind of had to wind it around, but it helps the stitches from falling off. Okay.
Oh, that's like the little pointy cap thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, like my grandmother
exactly.
had.
Okay. So with knitting, you've got all the stitches on your knitting
needles.
On your knitting needles, but mine are actually Tunisian crochet hooks, and this is why it makes it a little more difficult. And see how they keep passing along onto the other needle.
Gotcha.
So you wind up having all the stitches, half the stitch going onto the other, and then to close it, you're going to go in the other direction. But all the stitches, unless you actually close the stitch, finish it so that you have a clean edge like this. That's a whole nother technique, but that's how you go back and forth. So if we're talking about knitting, let's do a couple more stitches just to have a little more on there. And so I need to turn that down. It makes it easier, believe me. Okay, so
you never cease to amaze me.
All right, so then you would take the handy dandy stitch marker, you would put it on there like that, and then you continue knitting.
Oh, see, I had no concept how that worked.
Yep. So because this is an example and I don't really have to finish what I'm doing, since when do I finish anything that I'm doing? How many whips do I have?
Less than I do.
Oh, I doubt that, honey. So see how that's now on the hook? got to remember to bring this up for you guys. So see how that's now on the hook or on the knitting needle? If we were going in the opposite direction, so let's pretend we've come to the end and now I'm actually working in the opposite direction. Okay, I'm now going to cast in the opposite direction. Forgot to turn my hook. Okay, so I'm now casting in the opposite direction and bring those stitches closer. Now I get to where that stitch marker is, and all I do is flip the stitch marker to the other side, and now it's moving up my work with me.
Oh, okay.
So does that make sense now?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, I so did not understand that.
Okay, so that's how a knitting stitch marker works.
Okay.
Okay, and that's how it keeps moving up the work. All right. And as you can see, and we're just gonna flip these off because, you know, this is nothing serious. This is just for example purposes. So as you can see now, yes, you get to see my lovely arms. Hello. How do you like my arms? As you can see, it's just a solid, and it's a solid because they don't have to worry about taking them off halfway through. Unlike crocheting, where we actually finish the stitch. Okay?
Because the yarn never passes through it.
Actually it does, but we put it on versus pass it through, and you'll see in a minute. So, and they can be pretty. This happens to be a version that I made because we're gonna other stuff we're gonna do a little bit later, and that's Toby saying hello everybody. All right, so that's those. Now let's talk about the crochet stitch markers. Now there's quite a variety here because there's all kinds of them, and the biggest thing is, where did it all start from, right? The history of it. Well, who knows? Nobody really knows where it started. There's, from what I've been able to find, no real examples of early stitch markers. The only thing I could guesstimate is, let's say, and we're going to take off our example here of Tunisian crochet, but let's say you're crocheting along and you need to put a stitch marker in. So what I should have had is an opposing colored piece of yarn. You could take a piece of yarn and here we go, just flip it over like this. Makes it easier if it was a different color. I flubbed it, sorry guys. Thought I had it with me and I apparently don't. And you keep going. Well, here I've made some stitches. There is my example. And notice how I have this long yarn. So now when I come back, right, I turn it around. I'm going to start working it again. All right. Now I know that that's where I need to be, right? So I can just pull it out, bring it back up if I needed to, and keep crocheting right over it. See how that worked? And now it's right there. I have that example, okay? So that's what we're guessing. That would be a guess as to how an early stitch marker might have worked if they needed it. I haven't found any examples yet, but we'll see. If I do, I'll show you. But here we're going to have some, so we've just at the last minute, Rhonda in her infinite wisdom reminded me that she has some pretty, a different set of stitch markers than I've had. Now she has some similar to this one.
Different colors.
In different colors, it works the same. And we'll talk about those. But why don't you talk to us about this? Why do you like these? What's so special about these?
Well, these were the first ones that I ever used. And you said these were a split ring
yeah,
locking?
So that would be a split ring locking. So if you look at it carefully, so here, let's turn this around. See how this has a little bit of a nub right there. And it has a hole on this side, so you would just lock those two puppies together.
What I liked about these was the fact that they were super flexible. Stop
moving the table.
Oh, sorry. That they were really flexible. They were easy to get into the stitches I needed to. I could keep them on my finger like this to use as needed because I usually needed a few of them. And I could lock them if I wanted to, or if I didn't want to, I didn't have to. Usually, sorry.
No, you can keep it on the table. Just She keeps knocking the table, guys, and I could watch the camera jiggle.
I usually needed to lock them, but I didn't always need to. And if I didn't, a lot of times they fell out, which wasn't always helpful. But I just thought for my first try at them, I really liked them. I had used some of the others that didn't lock, like those. And
okay, we'll get to that. Hold that thought.
Okay.
Because, again, this is like a split ring lock. So this is what they call a locking. And that's, if you could barely hear that little click, because it locks in place, but it looks like a safety pin. And it's really, again, this is really easy. You would just put it through. The caution here is that it can potentially split your yarn if you're not careful.
That's my new favorite.
And you can lock it. She happens to like them. I don't like them. And this is a nice quality one. It has a nice, good strength to it. So, sorry guys.
Bless you.
So it's going to stay on there for you, but this is what they would call a locking. This is a split ring. And again, all you do is slide it through and then crochet right over it. And then to get it off though, a little bit of caution, because you have to twist it a little bit to get the ring so it doesn't catch on your yarn when you're taking it off. You don't want that little piece right there to catch your yarn and pull it off. Okay, it can split your yarn, it can ruin your yarn, especially if it's more delicate. In this case, you want to be cautious on the kind of yarn you use, because if it's a really thin yarn, it could possibly, if there's a little bit of tension, slip off of here. Okay, so you don't want that to happen either.
Or if they're not well made, they just fall out, which is also not helpful.
Did you? Oh, and did
mine
you have,
kept falling out.
Yours kept falling out. So see what I mean? She loved these. These kept on falling out, and there are different sizes of these, and there's different sizes of these too. I haven't seen any different sizes of those.
No.
So depending on the size of yarn, that could also be a dependent on a consideration I made as to which one of the stitch markers you want to use.
These work really well with worsted weight, the size 4,
which is this one.
I did a lot of work with that in the beginning, and those were what I started with, and it worked great.
And one of the things I have to say, I've not used these, but from just looking at it, as long as you don't use this end that has the nub on it, but this end to put it in and out, that sounds wrong, but shut up, Rhonda. This would be, nice because you're not going to catch any yarn and you're not going to ruin it. To me, this is a little too flexible, and I kind of concerned about, I don't know, just being too unwieldy for me. But that's me, okay? That's not everybody. So just to give you an idea.
Crochet rather loosely, and so for me, the flexibility was fine.
Really?
And for being my first attempt at them, I found them to be great.
Awesome.
They worked great.
Okay.
But as I've progressed and needed them to do different things and more of them, etc., I found that the slightly stiffer ones did have more advantage.
Okay. All right.
So
perfect.
Fool around with them, find
right,
out,
and
find
you have,
like.
and there's more to come. So don't go, oh well, I've got that one. Well, hold on a second, because there's more to come. All right, so that gives you the whole with those 3. Now let's move on to the next set. So this is a lobster claw, and if you're looking at this going, that looks like what's on my bracelet or my necklace, it's because, well, that's what it is. Okay, these are used for necklaces and bracelets. It's very good. You do have to just think about it when you're putting your necklace on or your bracelet on. You're gonna have to have a little bit of a grip. You have to get your nail on it, and then this goes on there and it holds tight. One of the beauties of having them on a lobster claw is you can actually use it as a zipper pull if you wanted to. And it looks great, and it's so cute. I made this. This was another set. We'll go into it in just a minute, but I did this so I can show you how this is done, but you can make your own, and we're going to be talking about that. So now see what I'm talking about. You've got to make sure you get it so you can undo it, and then you can potentially, pull your stitch kind of out of whack there. So that's another consideration for that one. Now this one here is considered the safety pin. Again, super cute. I actually happen to think that these are super cute. The challenge with this one is, and it's one of the ones that I started working on, the challenge with this one is it is a safety pin. It is pokey, and if You know me, I'm a klutz. Rhonda knows this. I will stab myself invariably at least once. Again, caution with the yarn. You can split your yarn if you're not careful. So if you're putting it in between and you're going to use that as a guide as to where your stitch is going to be, if it splits your stitch, it can cause some harm to your yarn. So something to be cautious about when you're using these as well. The other thing too, and this is, as you can see, very easy to lose your charm if you have a charm on there. If you use them without a charm, which you can buy them just like this, okay? You can buy them just like this and there's nothing to them and you don't have to worry about it and you can use this. And I would not recommend using a standard safety pin because it has that little curly loop that causes or creates the tension. Your yarn can get caught in that. And that will make a big mess, ruin your yarn. Not a good thing. These are far better if you're going to use them as a stitch marker. Notice how there's nothing for it to get caught on down here.
Excellent
but again,
point.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I'd be cheap and use the regular ones.
Right. And you know what? Don't hesitate from using them though, if that's all you have. We all need to start somewhere. Start there. There's nothing wrong with that. Start there. But when you can, at least upgrade to this if you're going to use them, because again, this is going to prevent you from getting your yarns messed up. And especially if you're using nicer yarns, hello, we want to take care of our yarn, right? And again, if you have a charm on it, be very cautious because it's very easy for them to fall off. And again, you have to have some pressure to close them. None of these are my favorites, I'll be honest with you, and they all have their challenges. This one, to be honest, I have not used the ones that Rhonda brought in today. Have never used them, so I really don't know how effective, but that whole trying to get that little smally thingy here, especially if I'm in the car or traveling, I feel like I have to pull it apart. I get jostled. That can go flying.
You notice all mine are open.
Okay. Hence. And it's a little too flexible for my liking. These, I like them better in the sense that they're a little more sturdy to me. They do lock, but again, it's that pressure, just like with the safety pin. Again, you're using pressure, you're having to twist. If I get jostled, I could potentially lose this. So that doesn't make for a very good stitch marker for me, okay? I don't know how many of you know this. I know Rhonda knows this. My right hand, sometimes some of my fingers go numb, which means I can't feel as well until I get it to stop being numb. And if I'm trying to use stitch markers, I get really aggravated when I can't feel and I'm trying to do, and that happens to all of us. What's the use in having something that's going to aggravate you? If you know you have something, look for items that are going to make your life easier, not harder. If it's too complicated, if it aggravates you, chances are you're not going to use it. Or your experience in crocheting is not going to be as pleasant as it can be. Why do that to yourself?
Sure.
This is supposed to be fun and relaxing and joyful. And if you're getting aggravated because of your tools, it's time to change your tools. Okay. And I get it. If money's tight, you kind of, stick with it until you can get something different. But really, stitch markers aren't that big of an expense. But I get it. I'm not passing judgment on anybody. Things happen. We all need help. And that's that. Now, my favorite happens to be the lever back. Okay. And if you're sitting there going, oh gosh, Sandra, that looks like an earring. Well, guess what? That's what this is. This is a lever back. This is what they use for earrings. So again, I don't know why I put that away. So we're crocheting along. I pull that open. I hold on to it. You still have to be careful not to split your yarn, okay? Because anything that goes into a project has the potential of splitting your yarn. But you put it through, you lock it, and it locks on its own. And there it is. It's on your work. And it's this one happens to be very seashelly. And it's very cute. And it's, okay. I happen to like this because it doesn't make me have to use a lot of force. If I'm in the car and I'm crocheting and I need to use it, it's easy for me to keep a hold of and not worry about it flying if I got jostled, because I'm trying to use force and keep a hold of it. And it's a lot of different things that you're doing at once. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Those are good points.
But that is for me. Again, everybody has a different idea as to what's going to be better for them. You know, if you like the ones that look like diaper pins, you know, it's all up to you. The coil rings, these are very nice. They lay very flat, as you can see. So they're handy for traveling. They're plastic, so they're light, and they're not going to have anything that catches. If you have fancy stitch markers, sometimes those can catch on your yarn too. So, you know, it's all things to be cautious and careful of and mindful of when you're working on this stuff. All right. And when it comes to the lever backs, if you really like your stitch markers that much, you can wear them as earrings. I'm just saying, you know, everybody's got...
But that's a good point, because if you need a stitch marker and don't have any, you can go raid your earrings.
And you know what, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even think of that, but hello, there you go. Raid your earrings if you need a stitch marker. I think that's flipping brilliant.
Well, your sewing box for safety pins.
And here's another thing. You know how we were talking about the safety pin? If you want to use that one for like on a zipper pull or something, you're going to be pretty okay. Again, just be careful when you open it up if you have a charm on it, because it can fall off very easily. The lobster claw, of course, great as a zipper pull. This one here, the lever back, I would caution you, you can still use it as a zipper pull, of course, but this isn't made for the tension or the pull of a zipper. So the chances of it opening up and you potentially losing it are higher if you try to use it as a zipper pull. Just saying, keep that in mind as options. If you have it on your craft bag, chances are it's pretty safe. You know, you're not flinging it around, you're not going out, you know, it's all depends on the use that you give it. So that's what I would suggest that you do. Now, like I said, I love this, and this is what I use. I make these, so these are all from my personal collection. I actually make stitch markers myself. And if you've noticed, most of these are in groups of 5. Most stitch markers, especially the custom ones, you'll see they'll come in groups of 5. Why 5? I have no idea. Do you have any clue why they always come in 5?
No, I like about 25.
Right. Yes. And I do too. So if you're out and about, you should have your stitch markers. And these are my stitch markers. And as you can see, I have lots of them. But as you can also see, all of these are on the lobster claws. Not all stitch marker makers put them on lobster claws.
Yours are way sexier than mine. I need to enhance my stitch marker collection.
Yeah, I have.
But you notice the 2 you made me, of the 5 you made me, are still in there. The other ones are securing
something.
Stitches, yes.
Yes, they're securing something.
Stitches.
One of the things when it comes to the stitch markers is that, again, it's all individual and whatever you want to use them for. Like I said, I happen to love my stitch markers, so I have quite a collection, and I've made a lot of them. So let's talk about that. Let's say you've come across a knitting stitch marker that you really like, but it's for knitting. You know, this is not conducive for crocheting at all. No. Okay, this is not going to help you. So that's very easy to take care of. You will need some tools. You're going to need a couple of pliers, jeweler's pliers, and a wire cutter. Now, understand when I say you need tools. If you're fortunate enough to be able to have jeweler's pliers, which you can get at any Michael's or Joann's or any craft store, Hobby Lobby, whatever.
Any place where there's beading.
Yeah, anywhere that has beading, you can find these. Are relatively inexpensive, and I'd suggest it. It'll make your job easier. That's all it does, okay? Just makes it easier. But if you don't, not to worry either, because you could go into your tool chest, raid it for a couple of needle nose pliers and a wire cutter. Now, if you don't have a wire cutter, or it is so big, because I've seen some of them, they're just huge. If they're so big that you can't use that, my suggestion is get a pair of scissors. Do not, and I warn you now, do not use somebody's designated fabric or paper scissors. Right? It could cause bodily harm. Just saying.
The kitchen boning shears work good too.
Yeah, those could work too, because remember what we're going to be cutting. Yes, they're tough, but they're not, you're not cutting steel cables. So you don't have to have like, oh my gosh, super tough stuff. But at the end of the day, if this is something that you're going to continue wanting to do, you might want to get these. Also, if your jewelry falls apart, like your necklace or your bracelet or your earrings, having these are very handy. I can't tell you how many times I have fixed somebody's jewelry in this house, or friends for that matter, their jewelry because something fell apart, and I have jeweler's tools and I did it. All right, so with that said, let's move on to how we do this. So you're going to need these tools. As far as other supplies, you're going to need, in my case, a lever back, because that's what I like. Actually, we're going to use a different one. We're going to use a lever back, okay? And we're going to need a jump ring. Okay, and there's a jump ring. Now, why do we need a jump ring? Let's take a look at this charm. So if you see this charm, and I personally know how this charm was made because I made it. See how this is coiled around here? The wire is coiled around here. This is not a separate loop. Okay, so we're going to need something to be able to attach the lever back. See how that does not have a split in it? We don't want a split in that because that would compromise the integrity of this, and if you pull too much pressure, it would just pop open. So that's why this is solid, and we can't cut this, because if we cut this, yes, it's a wire, yes, it's metal, but it is not the same strength as this ring or that ring. And what will happen is if you put a little bit of pressure, once this has been compromised, it will break. Okay, so that's why we have to change this and maybe even cut some things off, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So the first things first, in this case, we don't have to cut. This is a ring that has been put on here, and what we do have to do is find the split. So if you can see, that's where the split is right there. What you're going to do is take one set of pliers and put it alongside just outside of the split, and then take the other pair of pliers and put it on the other side. And what you're going to do is you're going to twist. Do not pull apart. And the reason is, if you pull apart, now it makes the ring all cattywampus. When we go to close this ring, should I want to close this ring again, by twisting it that way, I will twist back and it'll line it up perfectly. Okay? But in this case, we're just going to take it off. We're not going to use this ring. All right, and we're going to just set that aside. That's actually still a good ring. You could still use that, but now we're going to use this one. So again, this one's slightly smaller, slightly considerably smaller, but we're going to do the same thing. We're going to find the end. See, there's the end. So we're going to just do the same thing. Carefully do that. Now we're going to carefully do that, and then we're going to twist. This one's a little bit easier, and I always suggest keep the ring on your pliers, on one set of the pliers, because it just makes it easier to maneuver. It's harder when your fingers are like mine, kind of big. It makes it a little harder. All you're going to do now, if you can keep a hold of your charm, is pop the charm on there. We're going to pop this lever back on there. I'm going to come back here. Again, line them up. And all I'm going to do is twist them back into place. Ta-da! And now I have my charm. Earrings are made the same way. Okay? For all intents and purposes, this is now an earring. Or a charm.
Excellent.
All right? Yay. And that's why we have a jump ring. All right, that's perfect. But that was with one that had a ring. In this case, we don't have to open anything. We just go ahead and just play that open. And we could do, again, the jump ring to do that. We don't have to twist anything to get that off. But what I do want to show you is one more, and that's this one, because this can be a little bit of a concern. You're looking at this and you're like, well, great, Sandra. This doesn't have a ring. This doesn't slide off. This is actually the lever back that has a very solid bottom. And this has a handmade, by me in this case, handmade loop at the top. Well, what do I do? Which one do I cut off? Again, this one I wouldn't recommend cutting because the wire is very soft in comparison to this one and the ring that you would use. So cutting this, you would ruin the entire charm. So the decision will have to be made to ruin this lever back, basically, because,
Lobster claw.
Or I'm sorry, lobster claw. Because basically what we're going to do is we're going to cut it here and see, now that opens up, that falls off. This is now pretty much rendered useless. You can't use this. You can't close that again. If you're careful, you can, but you've now ruined the integrity. Again, if this were to be put on, like, say, a bracelet, it pulls a little bit, it's going to break off. You use it on a necklace, you might be able to use it a little bit longer because it is a necklace, and as long as the charm that you have on your necklace isn't really heavy, it'll last longer. But again, it gets pulled a little bit and it will open up. You will lose whatever you have on there. So this is pretty much rendered useless at this point. But you go back, and I don't know why it seems like I've lost something here. I had one more jump ring. Oh, there it is. Okay. So here's a jump ring and a lever back, right? And we're going to do the same thing. It's the same exact process. The only thing that I wanted to show you, and it's a decision you have to make, but again, you twist it, you pop these puppies on. You don't want to compromise the integrity of those items that are going to be the whole thing that keeps it together. And you close it, and now you have yet again another charm on its ring. You're like, great, that's fabulous. Now I know how to make a stitch marker from a stitch marker. What if I want to make my own stitch markers? And for those of you that are still around, if you stick around all the way to the end, I'm going to give you a code so that you can go onto my Etsy site. That'll be in the description if you want to check out the stitch markers that I have there. All right, so with that said, let's say you found this cute fuzzy little charm. Isn't that adorable? I just love it. And you want to turn that into a stitch marker. Well, you're going to need a jump ring and again another loop. Really simple. You do the same thing. There's nothing different. The only difference is you went to the bead store and actually bought it for yourself instead of seeing somebody else having created it. Whoop. So here we go again.
Slippery little suckers.
I know, for being fuzzy. And then we're going to do that. And here we go again. We're just going to twist them together. Am I coming out of frame? I hope that was in frame. And here we've made another charm. So now you have another stitch marker. Isn't that fun?
It's very cute.
Isn't that very cute? It's very fuzzy. Isn't it very fuzzy? All right. And you have all of these. Don't be limited. Let your creativity, let your imagination be your guide. Take a look at this one. So this was made by a lady that I see all the time at Off. This is hand-blown glass. It's a poppy seed, or a poppy seed, a poppy flower. And her name is Serena Smith. Lampwork is the name of the company. But if I turn this around, you'll see this was a button.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so I made a stitch marker out of a button, and I love the elegance of this. Isn't that stunning? I just love it. That's why I loved it so much. I'm like, I just have to have it, and I wanted it into a stitch marker. So what I did is I got one of the findings for making jewelry that I think they call it. This is the loop one, because I was thinking I was going to put a little charm here or a bead on here, but I decided to just leave it alone. Then I twisted the wire at the top to make the loop, and there you go. And I loved it.
Oh, you've given me a great idea.
Okay. I love buttons, so that's one of the things that I can do. This one here, this is a charm. So a dear friend of mine whom I love dearly passed away now in November. And from her collection, she was making some jewelry things, and she had this. Her name is Deanna. Deanna, I love you. And so I thought this was perfect. As you guys all know, I love the ocean. Here's a starfish, or a sea star as they call them now. And I made that into a stitch marker for myself. So now every time I see it, I think of her. And that's what you can do with anything. You can make them and out of anything. I bought this one, and I will also put her information down below. But this was originally a knitting one, and I turned it into a crochet one for myself because of that, you know. And there's so many neat people out there. I mean, this one was a whole collection of dogs. I fell in love with it, and so I had to have it. This is just a charm I found. It reminded me of my youngest daughter, who always has funky different colored hair, and so I had to have that one. And for those of you who are like my daughter and are into, here it is, Harry Potter, I also have Harry Potter stitch markers. And I will put her contact information down below. Those are made out of wood. And as you can see, all kinds of materials. I mean, there's no limit. And here's my Millennium Falcon, only because I'm a Star Wars geek. How fun is that?
I just figured out what to do with all those millions of tiny dice I have at home.
Yeah.
From the game store.
If you decide you want to go onto my Etsy site, you will see some charms that have been made out of Shopkins. So if you're into Shopkins, or if you know somebody who's into Shopkins, take a look at that. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. So what do you think so far, Rhonda?
I'm inspired.
I hope so. And I love that. I want you to be inspired. The beautiful, glorious thing about crocheting is that it is not any one thing. It is something for everybody. There's, no matter what your skill level, no matter what you're doing, all a stitch marker is some sort of hook thing that looks cute. I mean, let's be real. It can be totally practical. It could be a piece of yarn, okay? Or it could be absolutely adorable. It doesn't matter, as long as it does what you need it to do. But you can go as basic or as fancy as you want, and you can have a really nice collection. Let's face it, with the way things are going and the way things have gone, we want to make life pretty for ourselves, fun for ourselves. I like to smile and laugh whenever I can. This makes me smile and laugh. And when I'm crocheting and I see something like the Millennium Falcon, and I just feel silly because, really, Sandra, I have to have a Millennium Falcon? Like, when I saw, this was from Slip Stitch Studios, when I saw that they had these, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to have one, right? It was just crazy. I saw that. Another thing, the Serena Lampwork one, this one here, this is another button, and it looks like a little lamb. Is that not the cutest thing ever? I have it on my planner. I put it on my planner because I just loved it. And look, guys, it's just one of those, I kept it, okay, one of those giant jump rings, and I just put it onto my planner. So now I have my little lammy with me. And you were going to say something, Rhonda?
Well, the teacups, I feel the same way when I find the teacups that you made me, and there's a little plate that goes with it, a saucer, and a couple of other things. And anytime I come across those, they always make me giggle because you made them for me.
Right.
And it's fun.
It's fun, isn't it?
Oh,
it's a lot of fun. I think it's really great. So those are what you can do with these stitch markers. All right, so that's the wonderful world of stitch markers. Oh my gosh, here she goes again. Do you know how many takes we've had to do about for this? Yeah. She gets that look on her face. Anyway, wonderful, a lot of fun. Remember to always keep your stitch markers in something safe. I happen to love this. If you haven't noticed, I love Star Wars. And this is from, again, one of my all-time favorite stores, Slip Stitch Studios. I don't know if they have any of this one in particular, the Yoda, but it is hysterically funny. Check them out. They have a lot of different boxes, and I think this is one of the bigger ones, but I love it. It really keeps all of my stitch markers in there very nicely. I keep this right next to my chair when I'm crocheting and working on projects. This is actually from a YouTube video. It's a bad lip sync. It is hysterical. I will put not only the link to the stitch markers to Slip Stitch Studios down in the description, but I will also put their link. I've done it in another video, but it's hysterical. I love it. I have to share it. What?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. And my nose is still itching, guys. I don't know what the deal is. Okay, so there's that. Super a lot of fun. Not a whole lot of history on stitch markers as we've talked about before, but as you can see, there is so much flexibility with it. You can imagine it can be done with anything. And I'm actually kind of excited to explore some other options as well. We also talked about the code. If you stayed all the way to here, sorry guys, if you stayed all the way here to the end, the coupon code for my Etsy site, which if you go down below, the link will be there, to get no shipping, right? Free shipping.
Awesome.
For any size purchase. There is no minimum. Okay, so no matter what size purchase you get, it's free shipping and it's no ship stitch. I will also put that code at the very end of my description, so that you can get that code there as well. And it's just different kinds of things. Please understand, I don't do mass products. I get bored easily, and it's just what strikes me and what I see you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I shake my head visibly?
Was that my outside head shake? But they're all usually one-offs, as I mentioned before. If you're into Shopkins, I even made some stitch markers out of Shopkins, and I will have some in the future as well if that's something that people enjoy. So go check those out if you'd like. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up to like it, and also click the subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. That will let you know the next time we have a video. And I'd really like to thank Rhonda for being with me.
Always.
We
Anytime.
always have a good time, don't we?
Always.
It's always a little bit. You should see the bleepers. Maybe we should call them bleepers.
We should probably call them bleepers.
We should call them. You shouldn't see them. But
You
I might
want
add.
to.
I might put a couple in at the end. We'll see.
We
see how
think
that
they're
works.
hysterical.
Yeah, but then again, it's that inside joke thing. So we'll see. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I really enjoy having you all with me on this journey. I have been learning a lot more about crochet. I thought I knew a lot. Wasn't that a joke? I found out so much more. I have discovered some really cool information. So for those of you who like to geek out about crocheting, I'm going to help you with that. So that's another video that's going to be coming up soon. I hope you all have a great day. Take care of yourselves. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And as I always say, keep on stitching. This is Skipper Sandra signing off.